Captain Lisa Morgan stepped off the transport ship and looked up at the massive stone amphitheater that rose before her like a mountain carved by giants. The structure was so large that clouds formed around its highest peaks, and Lisa had to shield her eyes from the twin suns of Thyros. To see the top, she had never seen anything like it in her 32 years of life back on Earth. The biggest stadiums could hold maybe 100,000 people, but this place could easily fit 10 million beings, and from what she could see, it was nearly full. Lisa walked forward on shaking legs. She was the first human to ever attend a Galactic Council meeting, and she felt the weight of her entire species on her shoulders. Every step took her closer to representatives from hundreds of different worlds, and she wondered if she was making a terrible mistake. The path to the amphitheater was made of some kind of crystal that glowed softly under her feet. Other beings walked alongside her, and Lisa tried not to stare too obviously at their strange forms. Some looked almost human, except for blue skin or extra arms. Others were so alien that Lisa could not even figure out which end was their head. A tall, graceful figure approached her from the side. Lisa turned to look and saw what appeared to be a beautiful woman with pointed ears and silver hair that seemed to move in a wind that did not exist. Her skin had a faint glow and her eyes were the color of deep ocean water. The being spoke in perfect English, though her lips did not quite match the words. Lisa realized she must be wearing some kind of translation device. "I am Ambassador Kelathara of the Sylvani Empire," she said, with a voice like music. "You must be the human representative. We have heard much about your species, though most of it is probably not accurate." Lisa tried to smile, but her nerves made it come out crooked. "Thank you for the welcome. I am Captain Lisa Morgan. I represent Earth and the Human Federation." Studied Lisa with those ocean-colored eyes. The elf-like being was at least a foot taller than Lisa, and moved with a grace that made Lisa feel clumsy just watching her. "Your species is very young by galactic standards," Kelathara said, as they walked together toward the amphitheater entrance. "Most civilizations take thousands of years to develop space travel. You humans managed it in less than a century. That is either very impressive or very concerning." Before Lisa could respond, a loud roar echoed across the plaza. Both women turned to see a massive reptilian creature stalking toward them on two powerful legs. The being was covered in dark green scales and stood nearly 8 feet tall. Its yellow eyes focused on Lisa with obvious displeasure. "So, this is the primitive human," Zixandra spoke in a voice like grinding stone. Her English was harsh and heavily accented by what sounded like growls between words. "Your kind thinks they can solve problems that have defeated the greatest warriors in the galaxy." How amusing! Lisa felt her face grow hot but forced herself to stay calm. She had studied the files on Zixandra during the long trip to Thyros. The Saurian was a war leader from the hegemony, a collection of militant worlds that believed strength was the only truth worth knowing. "I understand your skepticism," Lisa said, trying to keep her voice steady, "but perhaps a fresh perspective might help where traditional methods have fallacious." Sandra laughed, and the sound was like rocks falling down a cliff. "Your perspective is that of a child looking at adult problems. That beast has killed thousands of our people and destroyed entire colonies. What could you possibly know about such things?" The three beings entered the amphitheater together. Though the tension between them was thick enough to cut, Lisa looked around in wonder at the massive space. The seats rose in perfect circles around a central stage, and beings of every shape and size filled them completely. The noise of hundreds of different languages being translated at once created a constant hum that seemed to vibrate through the stone itself. They found their designated seats in a section marked for new species. Lisa noticed that most of the other beings in their area looked relatively young by galactic standards. She wondered how long it would take for humans to earn a better position in this vast political structure. The central stage began to glow, and slowly, a holographic image formed above it. Lisa gasped as she saw a creature so massive and terrible that her mind had trouble processing what she was looking at. The beast was easily the size of a large building, with dark armor plating covering its entire body. 4 massive legs supported a body that seemed to shift and change as she watched 8 tentacle-like appendages emerged from its shoulders, each one thick enough to crush a Keltha. Creature in the image moved with surprising grace for something so large, but there was something in its movements that seemed almost sad. Lisa found herself studying the way it held its massive head and the slow, careful way it placed each enormous foot. A voice boomed across the amphitheater, speaking in the common galactic language that Lisa translation device quickly converted. 450 standard cycles. This creature has terrorized the Outer Rim colonies. It has destroyed 17 settlements and killed over 30,000 beings. Our greatest warriors have attempted to stop it, but all have failed. The image changed to show various battle scenes. Lisa watched as teams of armored soldiers fired energy weapons at the creature while it roared and thrashed in response. Other scenes showed massive ships trying to capture it with energy nets or force fields. In every case, the beast either broke free or became more violent in its struggles. Galethar leaned over to whisper to Lisa, "Notice how the creature only attacks when it is cornered or threatened. It does not seem to enjoy the violence." Nodded as she continued to study the images. Something about the creature's behavior reminded her of wounded animals she had seen back on Earth. They lashed out, not from malice, but from fear and pantha. Voice continued, "We have exhausted all conventional approaches. Military force has failed, containment has failed, even our most skilled telepaths cannot penetrate its mind. We are running out of options and time." Lisa felt her heart racing as she realized this was her moment. She stood up slowly, feeling the eyes of millions of beings turned toward her. The amphitheater fell silent as she raised her hand to request permission to attempt a solution. She called out in a voice that sounded much braver than she felt. The silence stretched for what felt like hours. Then laughter began to ripple through the crowd. Not cruel laughter, but the kind that people make when a child says something amusing. Sixandra roared with laughter, and even Calathara smiled, though she tried to hide it. A voice from the central stage spoke again. "And what makes you think you can succeed where our greatest champions have failed?" Human Lisa took a deep breath, because maybe the problem is not that the beast cannot be defeated. Maybe the problem is that we are trying to defeat the wrong thing. More laughter echoed through the amphitheater, but Lisa noticed that some beings had stopped laughing and were listening more carefully. "You speak in riddles," the voice said. Lisa felt sweat on her palms, but continued, "What if the beast is not our enemy? What if it is trying to tell us something and we just do not know how to listen?" The laughter died away completely now. Zixandra stopped smiling and leaned forward in her seat. Even the massive crowd seemed to hold its breath. "You propose to communicate with it?" the voice asked. Lisa nodded. "That is exactly what I propose. Instead of trying to capture or kill it, I want to try to understand it. Every intelligent species can communicate somehow. We just need to find the right way." The silence that followed was so complete that Lisa could hear her own heartbeat echoing in her ears. Finally the voice spoke again. "The Council will consider your request, Captain Morgan. If all other options are truly exhausted, we may allow you to make the attempt, but understand that the lives of billions depend on stopping this creature. If you fail, the consequences will be catastrophically." Sat down on legs that felt like water, Calathara placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, while Zixandra stared at her with something that might have been respect. "You are either very brave or very foolish," the Saurian warrior said. "Perhaps both." As the council session continued, Lisa found herself studying the images of the beast over and over again. Something in its movements called to her, and she began to form the outline of a plan that would either save countless lives or doom her species to be remembered as the ones who made everything worst. The meeting ended hours later with the decision that Lisa would be given her chance, but only after every other option had been tried first. She walked out of the amphitheater knowing that the fate of the galaxy might soon rest in her very human hands. 3 weeks later, Lisa stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel Harmony Edge, watching the stars streak past as they traveled toward the last known location of the beast. The ship was a joint venture between human technology and Sylvani design, resulting in something that looked more like a work of art than a military vessel. Phalathera stood beside her, studying a holographic display that showed the creature's movement patterns over the past several months. The elf-like being had volunteered to join the mission, much to the surprise of the Galactic Councilorship. "Is quite beautiful," Lisa said as she watched the graceful curves of the bridge. "Architecture blends seamlessly with the practical human control systems." "Thank you," Keela replied without looking up from her data. "My people believe that function and beauty should never be separated. We have learned that beings work better in spaces that please both the mind and the spirit." Behind them, Zixandra paced back and forth. Like a caged predator, the massive Saurian warrior had also joined the mission. Though she made it clear that she thought the whole enterprise was a waste of time, she wore armor that looked like it had been carved from black metal and carried weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. "This is foolishness," Zixandra growled for the 100th time since they had left Thyros. "The beast has killed thousands, and you want to have a conversation with it when it tears you apart. Do not expect me to feel sorry for you." Lisa had grown used to the warrior's complaints over the past 3 weeks. She continued studying the data while trying to ignore the constant negativity. "Look at this pattern," she said, pointing to the holographic display. "The beasts never attack civilian areas unless they are built on specific geographical features. Notice how every destroyed settlement was located near ancient ruins or burial sites." Phalathera leaned closer to examine the data. "You are correct. I had not noticed that connection before. My people have legends about creatures that guard sacred places. Perhaps there is wisdom in those old stories." Xandra snorted. "Ancient superstitions will not help us. The creature is a threat that must be eliminated before it kills more innocent people." The ship's communication system chimed, and the voice of Dr. Amy Walsh filled the bridge from her research station. Back on Earth, Lisa had been working with Amy via long-range communication throughout the journey, and the xenopsychologist had become invaluable in developing their approach. "Lisa, I have been analyzing the footage from all 50 failed attempts to capture the beast," Amy said through the speaker. "The pattern is clear. Every time the creature is approached with aggressive intent, it becomes more violent, but in the few cases where military forces maintained distance, it showed curious behavior rather than hostile behavior." "Can you be more specific?" Lisa asked. "In 7 instances where ships observed from a safe distance, the creature actually approached them peacefully. It only became aggressive when they powered up weapons or attempted to use containment fields." Amy explained. "It is almost as if the creature can sense hostile intent." "Makes no sense," Zixandra said. "Creatures do not have mystical powers to read minds. Actually, they do," Phalathera said quietly. "Many species can sense emotional states or intentions. My people have always known this, though we call it harmony sensing rather than mind reading." Lisa felt excitement building in her chest. This was exactly the kind of information she had hoped to find. What if the beast is not actually hostile at all? What if it is just defending itself against what it perceives as attacks? Before anyone could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The view screen switched to show a massive shape moving through the asteroid field. Ahead of them, the beast was even larger than the holograms had suggested, and Lisa felt her breath catch in her throat as she saw it in person. "There it is," Zixandra said, drawing her weapons. "Finally we can end this wait." Lisa called out, but the Saurian was already moving toward the weapons. Control Station Phalathera placed a gentle hand on Zixandra's arm. "Violence will only make things worse," she said in her musical voice. "We agreed to try the humans' approach." First, Zixandra snarled, but stepped back from the controls. Her yellow eyes burned with frustration as she watched the creature moving slowly between the asteroids. Lisa moved to the communication station and began entering commands. "All stop," she ordered. "Do not power up any weapons or defensive systems. I want the creature to see that we are not a threat." The ship slowed to a halt and hung motionless in space, several kilometers away from the beast. Lisa could see it more clearly now and was struck by how graceful its movements were, despite its enormous size. The creature seemed to be searching for something among the asteroids, turning its massive head from side to side as it examined each rock. "What is it looking for?" Kelethara asked. Do not know, Lisa replied, but I intend to find out. She activated the ship's external communication array and began broadcasting a simple mathematical sequence. 1 + 1 = 2, 2 + 2 = 4, 4 + 4 = 8. The pattern continued as Lisa hoped the creature would recognize it as an attempt at communication. For several minutes, nothing happened. The beast continued its search among the asteroids while the three women watched in tense silence. Then, slowly, the massive head turned toward their ship. Kelethara gasped. It is looking right at Usta. Creature began moving toward them with the same careful grace Lisa had observed before. As it drew closer, Lisa could see details that the holograms had missed. The dark armor plating was actually made up of millions of smaller scales that shifted and changed color, like oil on water. The 8 tentacle appendages moved independently, each one seeming to taste the space around it. It is beautiful, Lisa whispered. You are insane, Sixandra muttered, but even she seemed fascinated by the creature's approach. When the beast was only a few hundred meters away, it stopped and hung motionless in space. Lisa could see what looked like eyes scattered across its head, each one the size of a small building. They seemed to be studying the ship with the same curiosity that she was studying the creature. The communication array suddenly crackled to life, and a series of tones filled the bridge. The sounds were unlike anything Lisa had ever heard before. They seemed to have pattern and meaning, but were completely alien to human understanding. It's trying to communicate, Kelethara said with wonder in her voice. Lisa quickly recorded the sounds and began analyzing them with the ship's computer. The tones seemed to follow mathematical relationships, similar to music, but far more complex. Can you understand any of it? Lisa asked. Kelethara, elf-like being, closed her eyes and extended her senses in a way that Lisa did not fully understand. Some of my people can commune with other life forms, she said. Let me try. For several minutes, Kelethara stood perfectly still with her hands pressed against the ship's hull. Lisa watched as the woman's silver hair began to glow with a soft light, and her breathing became deep and rhythmic. The creature outside seemed to sense what Kelethara was doing. Its massive head tilted to one side and the tentacle appendages stopped moving. The alien tones from the communication system became softer and more melodic suddenly. Kelethara opened her eyes and staggered backward. Lisa caught her before she could fall. What did you sense, Lisa asked. Sadness. Kelethara whispered. Incredible loneliness and sadness. It is searching for something that it cannot find, something that may no longer exist. Before Lisa could ask more questions, new alarms began sounding. The ship's sensors detected multiple approaching vessels, and Lisa's heart sank as she recognized the energy signaturation Shenshan Dracup forces. She said, No, I told them to stay away. The Saurian warrior looked confused. I did not call for backup. On the view screen, Lisa could see a dozen heavily armed ships approaching from multiple directions. Their weapons were already powered up and targeting the beasts. The creature sensed the threat immediately. Its graceful movements became frantic, and the melodic tones from the communication system changed to what could only be described as cries of distress. No, wait. Lisa shouted into the communication system, but it was too late. The lead ship fired a containment net, and the beast roared with a sound that shook the harmony edge like a leaf. In a storm, the creature lashed out with its tentacle appendages, destroying the net and sending chunks of debris spinning through space. More weapons fired, and the beast became a whirlwind of motion. Its massive body twisted and turned as it tried to escape the crossfire. Lisa watched in horror as the being that had approached them peacefully transformed into the monster that had terrorized the galaxy. Stop firing, Lisa screamed into the communication system. You are making it worse. But the attacking ships either could not hear her or chose to ignore her commands. They continued their assault, while the beast fought back with increasing desperation. In the chaos, Lisa saw something that made her blood run cold. The creature was not trying to destroy the attacking ships. It was trying to escape toward a specific asteroid, one that glowed with the same kind of light that had surrounded Kelethara during her communion attempt. Is trying to reach something, Lisa said, That asteroid means something to it. The beast managed to break through the attacking formation and fled toward the glowing asteroid. The pursuing ships followed, firing constantly as the creature disappeared into the asteroid's shadow. Lisa slumped in her chair, feeling like she had failed before she had even really begun. They had been so close to making real contact, and now the opportunity was lost. The creature will not trust anyone now, Kalithara said sadly. We had a chance to understand it, and that chance may not come again. Zixandra stood silently at the weapons station. Her expression was unreadable, but Lisa thought she saw a flicker of doubt in the warrior's yellow eyes. Though pursuing ships regrouped and began searching the asteroid field, but the beast had vanished as completely as if it had never existed. Lisa stared at the glowing asteroid where the creature had fled and wondered what secrets it might hold. If we want another chance, she said, we need to understand what that asteroid means to the beast. And we need to make sure that next time we meet it, we are. Alana Kalatha nodded slowly, while Zixandra continued to stare at the place where the creature had disappeared. Perhaps for the first time since the mission began, all three women were thinking the same thing. They had seen something in that brief encounter that changed everything. The beast was not the mindless monster they had expected. It was a being capable of communication, emotion, and purpose. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, it was still searching for something that might be the key to ending the crisis without bloodshed. The ancient ruins of Vorden stretched across the horizon like the bones of some massive creature that had died eons ago. Lisa stood at the edge of the excavation site, feeling small and insignificant among the towering stone structures that predated most galactic civilizations by millions of years. The glowing asteroid had led them here after 3 days of careful tracking. The beast had not been seen since the disastrous encounter, but energy readings suggested it was somewhere on this forgotten world. These ruins are older than my people's recorded history, Kalithara said as she ran her hands along carved symbols that seemed to shift and change in the light. Her silver hair moved in patterns that matched the carvings as if responding to some unseen energy. My ancestors spoke of places like this in their oldest songs, places where the first peoples communed with guardian spirits. Zixandra kicked at a piece of broken stone, sending it skittering across the ancient plaza. Despite her warrior nature, the Saurian had been unusually quiet since witnessing the beast flee from the attacking ship's guardian spirits. She said, with less conviction than usual, your people have strange beliefs, Kalithara. Perhaps, Lisa said, studying readings on her handheld scanner. But strange does not mean wrong. The energy signatures here match the ones we detected around the beast exactly. It is almost as if this place and the creature are connected somehow. The three women had spent the past 2 days exploring the ruins while their ship remained hidden behind one of Vorden's 3 moons. The planet itself was officially uninhabited and had been avoided by galactic civilization for centuries due to strange energy readings that interfered with most technologies. They walked deeper into the ruins. Lisa noticed that the architecture became more organic the further they went from the outer edges. Early structures were clearly built by intelligent beings using tools and planning, but the inner areas looked almost grown rather than constructed, as if the builders had somehow convinced the stone itself to take the shapes they wanted. Look at this, Kalithara called from ahead. Lisa and Zixandra hurried to where the elf stood before a massive wall covered in intricate carvings. The images showed beings that looked almost familiar, tall, graceful forms that could have been distant relatives of Kalithara's people. But there were differences to these ancient beings. Had additional limbs that looked suspiciously like the tentacle appendages they had seen on the beasts. The carvings tell a story, Kalithara said, running her fingers along the stone. My people have legends about the Vardani, the first shapers. They were said to be beings who could speak with the spirits of stone and metal, convincing them to take new forms. What happened to them? Lisa asked. According to the legends, they chose to become one with their guardian spirits, rather than face extinction. Kalithara paused and looked thoughtful. Most scholars believe the stories are metaphorical, but perhaps they were more literal than we thought. Sixindra pointed to another section of the wall where the carvings showed the tall beings standing beside creatures that were unmistakably related to the beast. These stone guardians, however, looked peaceful and content, rather than the desperate, frightened being they had encountered. So the beast is descended from these guardian spirits, Lisa said, feeling pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. But what happened to turn it from a peaceful protector into something that attacks colonies? They continued exploring and found their answer in a vast underground chamber beneath the central temple. The walls were covered with more recent carvings, clearly added long after the original builders had vanished. These images showed the gradual transformation of the guardian spirits as their purpose was forgotten and their sacred sites were disturbed. Here is your answer, Kalathara said, pointing to a series of panels that showed the progressive stages of the guardians' decline. The first panels showed them living in harmony with various species, protecting ancient sites and sharing knowledge. The later panels showed confusion, anger, and finally, desperate violence as newcomers built settlements on sacred ground without understanding what they were destroying. The last panel was the most disturbing. It showed a single guardian spirit, the last of its kind, wandering among ruins and empty tombs, searching endlessly for others of its kind and finding only emptiness. It is alone, Lisa whispered. The beast is the last one left, and it has been searching for others like itself for who knows how long. No wonder it attacks colonies built on ancient sites, Alexandra said with something approaching sympathy in her voice. They are probably built on the burial places of its people. The sound of massive footsteps echoing through the chamber made all three women freeze. Lisa felt her heart hammering as the familiar melodic tones they had heard in space filled the underground room. The beast had found them. We need to leave, Zixandra said, reaching for her weapons. No, Lisa said firmly. This is our chance. The creature led us here for a reason. The footsteps grew louder, and suddenly the beast appeared at the far end of the chamber. Moving slowly and carefully, it approached the wall of carvings. Its massive head turned from side to side as it studied the images of its ancestors. Lisa watched in fascination as the creature gently touched the carvings with the tips of its tentacle appendages. The contact seemed to cause the images to glow more brightly, and the melodic tones became more complex, almost like a conversation between the beast and the stone itself. It is communing with the memories stored here, Kalathara said in wonder. This place is more than just ruins. It is a living archive of the guardian spirits' history. The beast turned toward them, and Lisa saw something in its many eyes that took her breath away. Intelligence, yes, but also profound sadness and a loneliness so deep it made her want to cry. The creature was not just the last of its kind. It was the keeper of all their memories and traditions, with no one left to share them with. Lisa stepped forward, ignoring Zixandra's hissed warning. She held up her hands to show she carried no weapons and began speaking in the gentlest tone she could manage. We understand now, she said. You are not a monster. You are a guardian trying to protect the memory of your people. We want to help you find a way to honor that duty without hurting anyone. The beast tilted its massive head and the melodic tones became questioning. Lisa wished she could understand the creature's language, but she could sense its emotional state, even without words. Kalathora moved to stand beside Lisa, her silver hair beginning to glow as she extended her harmony-sensing abilities. I can feel its thoughts, she said. They are complex and ancient, but I think I can establish a connection. Wait, Zixandra said. What if you are wrong? What if it decides we are threats? Then we die, Kalathara replied simply. But if we do nothing more, innocent people will die, and this magnificent being will remain trapped in its grief forever. Some risks are worth taking. The elf closed her eyes and placed her hands against the nearest wall. The stone began to glow under her touch, and the melodic tones from the beast became more excited. Lisa watched as a bridge of light formed between Kalathara and the creature, connecting them in a way that transcended species and language. Images began flashing through Lisa's mind, though she was not directly part of the connection. She saw the guardian spirits in their prime, sharing knowledge with countless civilizations and protecting sacred sites across the galaxy. She saw the gradual decline As old allies died, or forgot their commitments, and new species arrived without understanding the ancient agreements, most heartbreaking of all, she saw the creature's centuries of solitary wandering, searching for others of its kind, and finding only silence. The beast had been trying to fulfill its ancient duty to protect the sacred sites, but without guidance or companionship, it had become increasingly desperate and violent in its methods. The connection suddenly intensified, and Lisa gasped as she felt the full weight of the creature's loneliness crash over her. It was like being caught in an emotional storm that threatened to drown her and despaired. Too much, Calathara gasped, staggering. Backward, the connection was too strong, but the damage was done. The beast had sensed their emotions through the link, and its own feelings had overwhelmed them in return. The creature reared back with a roar of anguish that shook the entire chamber, and began thrashing its tentacle appendages in distress. Ancient walls began to crack under the force of the creature's grief, and chunks of stone started falling from the ceiling. Lisa realized with horror that the beast's emotional outburst was going to bring down the entire temple. The chamber shook again, and more debris fell. Lisa grabbed Calathara, who was still weak from the mental connection, while Zixandra positioned herself to shield them both from falling stones. "We have to get out of here," Zixandra shouted over the noise. But Lisa was looking at the beast. She could see that the creature was not trying to hurt them. Its anguish was causing the destruction, but that was not its intent. The guardian spirit was simply overwhelmed by centuries of suppressed emotion that had been triggered by their brief moment of understanding. "It does not want to hurt us," she called to the others. "It is just in pain." The beast seemed to hear her, and its thrashing slowed as it tried to control itself, but the damage was already done. The ceiling was coming apart, and they had only minutes before the entire chamber collapsed. Lisa made a decision that surprised even herself. Instead of running toward the exit, she ran toward the beast, dodging falling stones as she approached the massive creature. "Lisa, no!" Calathara screamed, but Lisa had seen something in the creature's eyes during their brief connection. It wanted to protect others, just as much as it wanted to find its own people. The guardian spirit had been shaped by millions of years of evolution to be a protector, and that instinct was still there. Buried under layers of grief and confusion, she reached the beast and placed her small human hands against its massive leg, feeling the warmth of life beneath the armor, like scales. "No, you do not want to hurt anyone," she said, looking up at the creature towering above her. "We can find another way. We can help you protect what matters, without destroying what others have built." Beast looked down at her, and for a moment, Lisa thought she was about to be crushed. But instead, the creature gently wrapped one of its tentacle appendages around her waist, and lifted her to safety, just as a massive section of ceiling crashed down where she had been standing. The gesture of protection toward someone who had shown it understanding seemed to calm the creature, and its emotional storm began to subside. The chamber stopped shaking, though the damage was already severe. As Lisa looked into the beast's many eyes, while being held gently in its grasp, she realized that they had crossed a threshold. The creature now saw them not as threats, but as potential allies. And for the first time since this crisis began, she felt real hope that they could find a solution that would save everyone, including the lonely guardian spirit that had been searching for purpose and companionship. For far too long, the ancient temple continued to collapse around them, as Lisa found herself held gently in the creature's massive appendage. 20 feet above the ground, she could see the full extent of the damage the beast's emotional outburst had caused. Huge chunks of stone that had stood for millions of years now lay scattered across the chamber. Calathara and Zixandra stood near the exit, calling for Lisa to convince the creature to put her down so they could all escape. But Lisa realized something that her companions did not yet understand. The beast was not going to leave this place. She could feel the creature's deep connection to the ruins through the physical contact. The guardian spirit had spent centuries searching for this sacred site, and now that it had found the last repository of its people's memories, it would rather die than abandon them again. "You do not want to leave, do you?" Lisa said, looking into the many eyes that surrounded her. The melodic tones that served as the creature's voice became sad and resigned. Lisa did not need Kalithara's translation abilities to understand what the beast was telling her. This temple contained the last traces of its entire civilization, and losing it would mean losing everything that remained of its people. But you do not have to choose between saving the memories and saving yourself, Lisa said, with growing excitement. What if there was a way to do both? The creature tilted its massive head in what might have been curiosity. Lisa looked around the collapsing chamber and noticed something she had missed before. The carved walls were not just stone, they contained some kind of crystalline structure that stored information, much like a computer. The entire temple was essentially a massive memory bank containing millions of years of the guardian spirit's history. The answer came to her in a flash of inspiration. Kalithar, Lisa called down to her companions. Can your people preserve digital information in crystal matrices? Yes. But why would that matter now? The elf called back. Because this entire temple is one giant storage device, Lisa replied. The memories are not just carved into the stone, they are encoded in crystal structures throughout the building. We can copy them. The beast seemed to understand what Lisa was suggesting, because its grip on her became more gentle, and the sad tones changed to something that sounded almost hopeful. Sixandra, this is insane, the Saurian warrior shouted as another section of ceiling crashed down. The whole place is coming apart. Lisa looked down at her companions, then back at the creature holding her. She realized that someone needed to stay with the beast to coordinate the memory transfer, while the others returned to their ship to get the necessary equipment. I have to stay here, she called down. The creature will not leave without knowing its people's memories are safe, and someone needs to maintain the connection. Absolutely not. Kalithara replied, that is far too dangerous. The chamber shook again, and more debris fell. Lisa could see that they were running out of time. The beast's emotional state was still unstable, and its unconscious movements were continuing to damage the ancient structure. Go, Lisa said with as much authority as she could manage. Get back to the ship and prepare the crystal storage arrays. I will keep the creature calm until you return. But if the temple collapses, Sixandra started, then you better hurry. Lisa interrupted for a moment. Both her companions stood frozen at the exit, torn between the desire to save her and the knowledge that her plan might be their only hope. Finally, Kalithara nodded. We will return as quickly as possible, she said. Stay alive, Lisa Morgan. The galaxy needs you. Sixandra hesitated a moment longer, then added grudgingly, do not do anything stupidly heroic while we are gone. The two aliens disappeared through the exit, leaving Lisa alone with the beast in the failing temple. She could feel the creature's emotional state through their physical connection, and realized that her presence was having a calming effect. The guardian spirit had been alone for so long that even this brief companionship meant more than she could fully understand. Talk to me, Lisa said to the creature. I know you can understand, even if I cannot understand your language. Tell me about your people. The beast began to make its melodic sounds, and Lisa found that, by listening carefully, she could detect patterns and rhythms that seemed to correspond to emotions. Even without translation, she could sense stories of glory and loss, of ancient partnerships between species, and the slow, tragic decline that had led to this moment. As the creature spoke, Lisa noticed that the crystal formations in the walls began to glow more brightly. The beast's voice was somehow activating the memory storage systems, causing images to appear on the intact surfaces. Lisa saw visions of the guardian spirits in their prime, working alongside beings from dozens of different species to build wonders that surpassed anything in the current galaxy. One image, in particular, caught her attention. It showed a guardian spirit, much like the beast, but smaller and clearly younger, standing beside a group of beings that looked remarkably similar to humans. The ancient humans were different, somehow more graceful and clearly more advanced, but the resemblance was unmistakable. You knew humans before, Lisa said with wonder. A long time ago, your people worked with mine. The Beast made excited sounds, and the images changed to show more scenes of cooperation. Between guardian spirits and early humans, they had been partners in some great project that Lisa could not fully understand, but which seemed to involve protecting sacred sites across the galaxy. The revelation that humans and guardian spirits had been allies in the distant past filled Lisa with new hope. If they had worked together before, perhaps they could do so again. The knowledge also explained why the beast had responded to their communication attempts while avoiding or attacking other species. There might be some genetic or cultural memory that made it more inclined to trust humans. The temple shook again, reminding Lisa that time was running out. She could hear sounds from above that suggested the upper levels were beginning to collapse. If Calathara and Zixandra did not return soon, both she and the beast would be trapped in the ruins forever. "Do not give up," Lisa said to the creature. "We are going to save your people's memories and find you a new purpose. You do not have to be alone anymore, though." Beast made questioning sounds, and Lisa tried to explain her idea, using simple concepts that might translate across species barriers. She said, "They protected sacred places and helped other species grow and learn. What if you could do that again? What if you could do that again? What if instead of guarding empty ruins, you could guard living worlds with people who understand and respect what you represent?" The creature seemed to consider this idea, and its emotional state shifted from despair to something approaching hope. Lisa could feel the change through their connection, and it filled her with determination to make her vision reality. Suddenly, she heard the sound of approaching vehicles, and relief flooded through her when she saw Calathara and Zixandra returning with a team of technicians and a massive mobile crystal array. The equipment looked like a combination of Sylvani elegance and human practicality, perfectly suited for the task ahead. The beast immediately became agitated when it saw the other beings, but Lisa spoke to it in soothing tones. "They are here to help," she said. "These are my friends, and they want to preserve your people's memories just as much as I do." Calathara approached slowly with her hands visible and empty, while the technicians began setting up the crystal storage equipment. She spoke in her musical voice, using the harmony sensing abilities that had allowed her to connect with the creature. "Before we understand your loss," she said to the beast, "your people were great, and their wisdom should not be forgotten. We offer you partnership as your kind once partnered with ours." The beast listened carefully, and Lisa could feel its emotions shifting toward cautious hope. The creature slowly lowered her to the ground, but kept one appendage gently touching her shoulder as if afraid she might disappear. The memory transfer process was unlike anything Lisa had ever seen. The technicians connected their equipment to the crystal formations in the walls, while Calathara used her abilities to interface directly with the guardian spirit's consciousness. The beast served as a living translator, helping to decode millions of years of stored information. As the transfer progressed, images and sounds filled the chamber, showing the rise and fall of an entire civilization. Lisa saw the guardian spirits at the height of their power, serving as bridges between species and helping to maintain peace across vast regions of the galaxy. She saw their gradual decline as their partners died or moved on, and their increasing isolation as newer civilizations forgot the old agreements. Most importantly, she saw the deep purpose that had driven the guardian spirits for millions of years. They were not just protectors, they were teachers and mediators, helping other species learn to coexist peacefully. The beast had been trying to fulfill this ancient role, but without guidance or companionship it had become confused and desperate. When the transfer was finally complete, the beast stood quietly for several minutes, processing what had happened. The creature seemed to understand that its people's memories were now safe, and that their wisdom could be shared with new generations. Lisa approached the creature and placed her hand on its massive leg. "Your people are not truly gone as long as their knowledge lives on," she said, "and you are not truly alone as long as there are others who respect what you represent." That beast looked down at her, and for the first time since they had met, Lisa saw something other than sadness. In its many eyes, there was determination there, and hope. and perhaps most importantly, a sense of renewed purpose. The temple gave a final shudder, and large sections of the remaining ceiling began to fall. The evacuation proceeded quickly, with the beasts moving carefully to avoid causing more damage. As they emerged into the daylight, Lisa realized that everything had changed. The creature that had terrorized the galaxy was gone, replaced by a being with a new mission and new allies. The real test would come when they returned to civilization and tried to convince the Galactic Council that their solution was better than warfare. But as Lisa looked at the beast standing peacefully among her companions, she felt confident that they had found something rare and precious in the vastness of space. They had found understanding where others had seen only conflict. And they had built a bridge between species that had been separated for far too long. The guardian spirit had its purpose. Back in Lisa suspected that the galaxy was about to become a very different place. 6 months later, Lisa stood in the observation deck of the newly constructed Guardian Station, watching ships from dozens of worlds arrive for the dedication ceremony. The space station orbited peacefully above New Kepler, the first colony that the beast had attacked, and the first to be rebuilt, using the ancient knowledge recovered from the ruins of Verdante. Colony below looked nothing like the sterile military outpost it had been before. The new settlement incorporated design principles learned from the guardian spirits, creating buildings that worked in harmony with the planet's natural energy flows. Gardens and parks were integrated throughout the city, and crystalline structures, similar to those found in the ancient temples, served as both beautiful architecture and functional memory. Storage devices. Most remarkably, the beast, now called Morden by the name Lisa, had learned from the ancient records, lived peacefully among the colonists. The massive creature had become the settlement's protector and teacher, sharing knowledge that had revolutionized everything from agriculture to energy production. The transformation had not been easy. The Galactic Council had initially refused to believe that the creature could be anything other than a threat. It had taken months of careful negotiation and demonstration before they agreed to the experimental partnership, and even now, there were those who viewed the arrangement with suspicion. Calathar approached from across the observation deck, her silver hair flowing as always in an unfelt breeze. The elf had become the first director of interspecies harmony, a new position created specifically to handle situations like the one they had resolved. "The ceremony is about to begin," she said with a smile that seemed to light up the entire room. "Are you ready to address the galaxy?" Lisa nodded, though she still felt nervous about speaking to such a large audience. Representatives from over 200 worlds were gathered in the station's main assembly hall, and billions more would be watching the broadcast throughout known spacewalk. "If they do not accept our recommendations," Lisa asked. "No, the pilot program has been successful, but expanding it to other worlds is a much bigger step." Calathera placed a reassuring hand on Lisa's shoulder. "We have proven that understanding works better than force," she said. "The data speaks for itself. Colony productivity on New Kepler has increased by 300% since Morden became their guardian. The crime rate has dropped to nearly zero, and the colonists report the highest satisfaction levels ever recorded through the observation windows." Lisa could see Morden moving carefully among the buildings of New Kepler. The creature had learned to modify its size, using abilities inherited from its shapeshifting ancestors, making it possible to interact directly with the much smaller colonists. Children especially seemed drawn to the gentle giant, and Lisa often saw them playing games that Morden had invented using its tentacle appendages. The sight still amazed her. Every day brought new evidence that the creature intelligence was far greater than anyone had imagined. Morden had not only learned to communicate using multiple galactic languages, but had also begun developing new technologies based on the recovered memories of its people. New voice interrupted her thoughts, and Lisa turned to see Zixandra approaching from the station's command center. The Saurian warrior had undergone perhaps the most dramatic transformation of anyone involved in the project. "The final delegations have arrived," Zixandra announced. Her voice still carried the growling undertones of her species, but the constant anger that had once defined her was gone. I have completed the security briefings, and all weapons have been properly stored. Lisa smiled at the sight of Zixandra's new uniform. Instead of the black armor she had once worn, the warrior now dressed in the blue and silver colors of the Guardian Corps. The organization had been formed to handle similar situations throughout the galaxy using the principles they had developed during the Beast Crisis. How many applications have we received for Guardian training? Lisa asked. Over 10,000 from 47 different species. Zixandra replied with obvious pride. Most are military personnel who want to learn alternative approaches to conflict resolution. Your methods are becoming quite popular among those who have seen them work. The three women made their way to the assembly hall where the dedication ceremony was about to begin. Lisa felt her heart racing as they approached the podium that had been set up at the center of the vast space. Representatives from hundreds of worlds filled the seating areas, and floating platforms accommodated species that could not use traditional chairs. The front of the hall, a massive view screen showed live images from New Kepler where Morden was participating in the ceremony. Via holographic link, the creature had learned to modulate its size for such events, appearing at a scale that allowed comfortable interaction with the much smaller beings. Supreme Chancellor Vex of the Galactic Council rose from his place of honor and addressed the assembled delegates. His translated words filled the hall as he spoke about the unprecedented success of the Guardian projects. 6 months ago we faced a crisis that threatened the stability of our entire civilization, he said. A creature of immense power seemed determined to destroy everything in its path. Our greatest warriors had failed to stop it, and many believed that total warfare was our only option. The Chancellor paused and looked directly at Lisa, then Captain Lisa. Morgan of Earth proposed something that many of us thought was impossible. She suggested that we try to understand our enemy instead of destroying it, that we seek communication instead of conquest. The results speak for themselves. Images appeared on the view screen, showing the transformation of New Kepler from a destroyed military outpost to a thriving community that had become a model for interspecies cooperation. Colony productivity has increased beyond all previous records, the Chancellor continued. Scientific advancement has accelerated due to knowledge shared by our new Guardian partner. And most importantly, we have learned that some conflicts can be resolved through understanding rather than force. Lisa stepped forward. When her name was called, feeling the weight of history on her shoulders, she looked out at the assembled delegates, knowing that her words would help determine whether the Guardian project expanded to other worlds or remained an isolated experiment. 6 months ago, I stood before this council and asked for permission to try a different approach. She began. I believed that the creature we called the Beast was not truly our enemy, but a being in pain who needed our help rather than our weapons. She gestured toward the view screen where Morden could be seen gently interacting with a group of children from New Kepler. I was right, but not in the way I expected. Morden is not just a peaceful creature that was misunderstood. Morden represents an entirely different approach to galactic civilization, one based on cooperation, protection, and the sharing of knowledge rather than competition, dominance, and the hoarding of resources. Lisa paused to let her words sink in before continuing. The ancient records we recovered from Vorden show us that the Guardian spirits once helped maintain peace across vast regions of space. They served as mediators between species, teachers of wisdom, and protectors of the sacred bonds that held civilization together. We have the opportunity to restore that system, but only if we are willing to change our own assumptions about how different species should interact. She looked directly at some of the military representatives who had opposed the project from the beginning. This does not mean abandoning our defenses or ignoring real threats, she said, but it does mean recognizing that many conflicts arise from misunderstanding rather than genuine hostility. And it means being willing to try patience and empathy before resorting to force. The hall was completely silent as Lisa concluded her speech. The success of New Kepler spoke for itself, but expanding the Guardian project would require participating worlds to fundamentally change their approaches to interspecies relations. Chancellor Vex rose again and called for the formal vote that would determine the project's future. Lisa held her breath as the delegates activated their voting devices and waited for the results to appear on the main display. When the numbers finally appeared, Lisa felt tears of joy running down her face. The vote was not even close. Over 80% of the delegates had approved the expansion of the Guardian project to other worlds. The celebration that followed lasted well into the night, but Lisa found herself drawn away from the crowds to spend quiet time in the observation deck watching Morden move peacefully through the city. Below, Kolatha and Zixandra joined her there as the festivities continued in other parts of the station. "We did it," Lisa said quietly. "We actually changed the way the galaxy thinks about conflict resolution." Kolatha smiled and placed her arm around Lisa's shoulders. "You showed them that there was another way," she said. "Sometimes that is all it took." Zixandra stood at the window watching Morden with an expression that would have been impossible to imagine 6 months earlier. The fierce warrior had learned to see strength in protection rather than conquest, and her perspective had influenced countless other military leaders throughout the galaxy. "What happens next?" Zixandra asked. "The Council has approved expansion, but implementing the Guardian project across hundreds of worlds will not be simple." Lisa looked out at the stars, knowing that each point of light represented worlds where conflicts might be resolved through understanding rather than warfare. "We start small," she said. "We train Guardian teams for worlds that request them. We share the knowledge we have recovered from the ancient archives. And most importantly, we remember that every species has something valuable to contribute to galactic civilization." She turned to look at her companions, 2 beings from completely different worlds, who had become her closest friends and most trusted allies. "Guardian spirits understood something that we had forgotten," she continued. "Diversity is not a weakness to be overcome, but a strength to be celebrated. When different species work together, sharing their unique perspectives and abilities, they can accomplish things that none of them could achieve alone." As if responding to her words, Morden looked up from the city below and made the melodic sounds that had become so familiar. The creature's voice carried across the space between them, filled with contentment and purpose. Lisa smiled as she listened to the alien song that no longer sounded alien at all. It sounded like hope. 3 days later, the first Guardian teams departed for their assigned worlds, carrying copies of the ancient knowledge and new approaches to interspecies diplomacy. Lisa watched them go, knowing that some would face challenges and setbacks, but she also knew that they carried something more valuable than weapons or technology. They carried the understanding that most conflicts could be resolved through patience, empathy, and the willingness to see former enemies as potential friends. The galaxy was about to become a very different place, and Lisa could hardly wait to see what they would build together. As the ships disappeared into hyperspace, Lisa raised her hand in a gesture that had become symbolic of the Guardian project. It was the same gesture she had made 6 months earlier, when she volunteered to face the beast, but now it meant something different. It meant that when others saw only problems, she saw opportunities. When others saw only enemies, she saw potential allies. And when others believed that force was the only solution, she was ready to raise her hand and offer another way. The age of the Guardians had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.